Thank you. So we're going to go over who is CURYJ. Communities United for Restorative Justice is a community-based organization that works to unlock the leadership of young people to dream beyond bars. We look to young people to lead the way in transforming our communities by investing in their healing, aspiration, and activism. We are a movement-building organization, but also provide support to young people and adults impacted by the criminal and justice system and state violence. And we support with life coaching, participatory defense for those facing charges or currently incarcerated but trying to come home, and to support our communities who are experiencing violence.
All right, rule number 4. Members will be asked to say a question and have the same time to answer. The order for answering questions will change with each question, and will be the order when we ask the question. Who's the order? Okay. A timer will be shown on the screen. Is that all right? Awesome. And it'll be visible to speakers, indicating how much time remains. When the time ends, speaker must end their speech within 10 seconds. And rule number 6, after the candidates for District 4, we will do the exact same process for District 5 candidates, then we will do the same for the state Senate seats, and then we will end with the U.S. Congress seats. And I will pass it back to Amanda.
You see the connection between tough on crime policies and demands for harsher consequences impacting the super predator narratives that put a target on young people of color and humanizes. If you want to be
Thank you for that. No, the tough on crime narrative is incredibly problematic. I was coming of age in the 80s and the 90s when the super predator narrative was the one that was really taking hold, and when the crack epidemic was harming this urban area in the Bay and also many other urban areas around our country. And we have seen more and more money poured into the criminal legal system, and the outcomes are what we're experiencing today. People are unhoused, people are in need of mental health care, our public health system is bereft of funding. We are unable to house people who have jobs. Corporate developers are actually still using the same scare tactics right now to make us all worry that the quality of life in this beloved town in Oakland, in the Bay Area, is so low that none of us should live here. And when they drive the property values down, you know what they're going to do? The same thing they did in the 80s and the 90s. They're going to buy it all up, and then they're going to sell it back to us at a higher price. We cannot allow these people to come through to our community with the same scare tactics so that they can buy it out from under us and then sell it back to us at a higher price. That's what's behind this tough on crime rhetoric. I'm not for it. We deserve community benefits, and we deserve to have the funding to utilize that.
Thank you.
Yes. Being an African American male, I think it's important that we show a sense of responsibility. I was raised to be a responsible citizen of our society, and I was also raised that it's important to have accountability and consequences for bad behavior. None of us are perfect. We've all fallen short, but for the grace of God, a lot. And that's one reason why I'm a firm believer of upstream approaches, which are prevention, intervention, middle stream, and then also enforcement. If you don't have a sense of societal order, then it becomes chaos. I've demonstrated that when I was on this body as old city council person, sitting right over there for 10 years, young people came to me and said they'd like to have youth uprising. I supported youth uprising as a county supervisor. That facility is now out there. I'm on a board for youth uprising. I support Youth Alive, which is another youth-related organization that works on upstream approaches to violence prevention. I support violence prevention at the county supervisor level. I also support AB 823, Alternatives to Detention. I support Martin Luther King Freedom Center, which is focused on young people and their needs around civic responsibility. I support Care First Jails Labs. So there are many things that I do, but I also think it's important that we have a balanced approach. There's a sense of accountability. We just can't have a society that's built on lawlessness. We need to have a society of accountability.
Thank you so much. Her question, how are we feeling? Good? How would you address the imbalance of resources that we invest in law enforcement and incarceration versus our investments in paying for teachers, child care workers, Head Start staff, clinicians like mental health therapists, doctors, in our county that require more education and provide much needed resources to our community that police cannot provide? And we'll do Nate first.
Yes, once again, I look at things from a balanced perspective. I look at it in terms of what's good for the entire public. If I was advocating for one side or another, then I could be more myopic in my approach, but I have to look out for the general welfare. The county's budget of $4 billion, $2 billion of that is allocated to social services and health care. That's half the county budget. The law enforcement part of the budget is about, for the sheriff's department, is about $500 million. Clearly, we put more money into community-type services for vulnerable populations than we do in law enforcement. But we do have to have a balance around this. It's also very important that we look to ensure that there's quality of life for everything that we attempt to do throughout our society, including resources for the criminal justice system. And as someone who looks at these things from the perspective of what we need to do in order to ensure that there's a compliance, I think that's equally important. Clearly, we don't want to incarcerate individuals. We don't want to put more money into one side or the other. It's not either or. It's really both. And we've constantly struggled at the county to ensure that we're doing both and putting more money into social services, health care, alternatives to detention, things of that nature. When they were looking to build a larger juvenile hall, I fought for a smaller juvenile hall.
Thank you.
So I think we can look at raw dollars, but we have to think about spending allocations. We have to think about how the money is actually spent and what we get in response. We need a Department of Equity in this county. And I'm going to take one step back. When we talk about funding, I'm a public health nurse and psych nurse. I just help to run our county health system. And I can tell you right now, when people are looking for care, they are on wait lists. If you want mental health care, take your wait for 6 months. If you want primary health care, you're on a wait list behind 10,000 people. Our criminal legal system, the entire criminal legal system gets 25% of the budget, $1 billion. That is what is allocated, and what is actually spent often increases beyond $1 billion. That is a lot that we spend criminalizing people in our community. This week alone, in the last 5 days, I got 3 calls from people who are in my friend community asking me for help because they know I'm a psychiatric nurse, because they had people in their families who were in crisis. They had nowhere else to turn. That's what's broken in our system. When people are looking for their friends to give them advice and to tell them how to navigate, that means that something is terribly wrong. And even if we're spending $2 million a year, it is not reaching the people. So something has to change. And after 24 years, we can't keep doing the same thing. So I say, let the police do their jobs and let people like me with the right training and expertise inform how our public health system and mental health system are governed and actually operate.
Well, thank you so much. We're on our 4th question now. The order would be Jennifer and Nate. There is also an increase in transitional age youth ending up in Santa Maria jail and the adult system. What are your plans to end the incarceration of youth and treating youth like adults? How will you hold the county sheriff's office accountable to keep people safe and healthy in Santa Maria jail, especially our adults?
Well, accountability is a big deal. The state enacted legislation 3 years ago, 1185, so that we can have sheriff oversight. It has not been passed and enacted in these 3 years, and that is because our incumbent, who's sitting to my left, has stalled on that, on purpose, dragged and delayed, and made sure we didn't get it. The first thing I will do is make sure we get a community board placed Also, our transitional age youth, those who are 16 to 24, are a special population that needs special attention, services, and care. The youth foundations that we have heard about, that our incumbent sits on board of, and even the Reach Youth Center in my neighborhood has had diminished funding over time. Our youth centers are not able to really take care of transitional age youth in the ways that they can, so that our youth are not moving into the jail system, so that they have activities and are occupied in services, because the youth centers are not open on weekends, because they're not even open in the evenings, when youth actually need to be receiving services. School hours are irrelevant. Work hours are irrelevant. Young people are available in evenings and weekends. Those youth centers need to be better staffed. The funding needs to be increasing over time, not decreasing. But those are the policy decisions we see coming out of this incumbent's duration of this term. We have to shift our focus, and that is where I will make things different. I will absolutely be funding our youth centers and enforcing sheriff oversight immediately.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm really a very strong proponent of therapeutic intervention, both in juvenile hall and at our jail. I think that's extremely important. AB 823 would ensure reimagining juvenile justice. I also support care first, jails last. That's important. I've been a champion of 1185 implementation, oversight, and an office of special general. It hasn't occurred because of the pandemic, the transition from one sheriff to another, the fact that we do a lot of community engagement around it. There's a lot going on in terms of its implementation. But I support oversight and also inspector general. I also provide $500,000 annually out of my budget to support National Youth Center, which is a $3 to $4 million operation to close the budget gap. I constantly am trying to strive to improve the ability of young people to thrive and have resilient lifestyles. I supported and led the effort around Measure A, which is an essential healthcare measure that raises over $100 million annually for healthcare services. I supported and led the effort around Measure W, which is another measure that will provide funding to help our young people and other vulnerable populations. I supported the Covenant House for homeless youth over the years. I supported Measure C and led the effort around that, which will provide child care. There are many things that I've done to indicate my support for young people.
Thank you so much. Our last question, and because we're a little bit ahead of schedule, we've actually allow you guys to do a closing statement at the end. Last question. What will you do to promote climate justice in our county? And that will go Nate and then Jennifer.
So in order to promote climate justice, one thing we're doing in the unincorporated area, we're doing an environmental justice element to our general plan, and that's important. A number of years ago, I got the general plan for the county to have a wellness element, so this is building upon that, and that was very unique at the time, this wellness element. It's important. I serve on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the county's Transportation Commission and the area quality management district. It's important that we get vehicles off the road. I'm a big proponent of transit, both in my life as a county supervisor and working with seniors who use public transit quite a bit. And if we get more transit, we get vehicles off the road, that reduces greenhouse gases. It also directly relates to our ability to deal with climate change. We need to have resilient measures in place. We need to have adaptation in place as well to address climate change. I'm a strong proponent of us looking at that. I support the efforts that are happening in the state of California and the efforts that our federal government is taking on to address climate change. I do everything that I can do. The county, through our government, we're also looking at clean vehicles. We're looking at solar. We're looking at other policies that will make us more carbon neutral, to use less fossil fuels. That's important. So I'm right on the line with this.
Thank you.
What I keep hearing, and I think what we've all heard, is a lot of plans, a naming of legislation. But I think what we need to feel and see are the results. Plans are wonderful, but they're just worth the paper to print on. We must have action action, we must have urgency, and we must have accountability. And I think that's also what's missing. If we have a $4 billion budget that is being invested year over year, but we still have all these issues, where's the accountability? In mentioning term limits, the question about what the voters are going to do, you young people are able to vote. Vote for accountability. 24 years is plenty enough time to have been sitting on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District and to be sitting on the Metropolitan Transit Commission, but we still don't have enough buses on the road. If we have this environmental plan that is coming, but it's not created at the same time or not adapted at the same time as the AC Transit model, how is this going to work in an effective manner? These plans are created in isolation. Our county is operating where everything is separated. And this is why a plan may not be able to be enacted in a way that is actually effective. Because all these different agencies are putting things together in ways that actually do not overlap and make things cohesive. For us to get cohesion, I think we actually need to take away the experience that has been blocking us, that has had people operating in independent silos, and we need a fresh set of eyes.
Thank you so much. So we have time for closing. And to keep the order going, you can go first, and then you can go last, and we'll be a little bit ahead of schedule before we ask in this this will be, yeah, I'll check that out.
Thank you so much, CURYJ, for hosting this forum, for bringing young people together, because our young people are absolutely going to experience the effects of every policy made longer than any person who is currently on this dais. My kids are 18, 19, and 22, and I want them to be able to afford to live where they've grown up. I want them to be able to feel good about living here in the Bay Area. But right now, if you listen to the news, this is a scary place. And it's become this way because of the leadership and the policies that we have had for all these decades. My name is Jennifer Esteem. I'm a public health nurse and a psychiatric registered nurse, and I am here to serve to give everyone a fresh opportunity. Because frankly, when someone says I need more time, but they already had decades, we have to really question that. Like, what is more time going to do? We are in a space in our life where there's so much turmoil, so much dedication to militarism, and our federal government is considering sending another $95 billion to pay for death and destruction overseas. If we continue to invest in militarism here at home, we already know what we get from that. We deserve health, we deserve clean air and water, and we deserve to have leadership that believes that our experiences are what should inform policy and investments. Thank you again for your time and for your attention.
Thank you.
Yeah, I very much value the opportunity to speak to all of you. As I said, I sat on the Oakland City Council right over there. I came to Oakland as a Jesuit volunteer to knock on doors in communities, to organize for people to make City Hall responsive. At that point in time, it was pretty white, it was pretty male, it was pretty Republican. I learned a lot from that experience of work with community. And as a result of that, I was elected to the City Council 13 years later. I spent time preparing for that. Then, when Mayor King decided not to run for the Board of Supervisors, I ran for that seat against seven other folks in my school. And I still have a very strong passion for public service. When I was on the City Council, I led the effort for the lead abatement authority to address lead in homes and its impact on young people. I supported the Proposition 215, medical cannabis, and I supported the effort to make cannabis recreational because I felt we needed to do that as well. I have the endorsement of a number of organizations like the Latino Young Democrats. I have supported all the organizations that belong to SEIU 1021, which is the union she belongs to, the California Nurses Association, and others. And as I pointed out, I put a lot of resources into organizations that support young people. I've done a lot around deputy sheriff activities, the work that they do in the corporate area to support young people as well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, so our first question starts with, is it okay if I can call you by your first name? First we're gonna start with Nikki, then we're gonna go to Gregory, then Chris, and then Laura. And the question states, without term limits, it may be hard for supervisors who hold office for decades to stay in touch and connected to the people they represent, especially youth. Do you think term limits for board of supervisors could be good or not for our county, and why?
Well, first I want to say thank you for being here. My name is Nikki Fortunato Bass. I am currently the president of the Oakland City Council and council member for District 2, so welcome to Oakland City Hall here on unceded Ohlone territory. I do believe term limits are important for the Board of Supervisors. I would support term limits of 3 terms, 12 years. Here in Oakland, I supported Measure X, which added term limits for city council members, 3 term limits, 12 years. And I want to share with you that I'm already working in coalition with CURYJ, with Urban Peace Movement, with a number of organizations. I hope over the course of this forum I'll get to talk about the work that we've been able to do together, which has ranged from passing the Youth Vote Initiative to supporting the Free Our Kids Coalition, and a range of things that would really help uplift our youth and our children. It looks like I have a little bit more time, so maybe I'll go into some of that. My philosophy around being in elected office, having been first an organizer, is to listen and to understand that those of you with lived experience have both an understanding of the problem as well as the solutions. And that's why I have already been working with many of you on a number of things to really lift up the solutions that you see. And at the county level, I think that we already have a roadmap for what some of those things are, including the Free Our Kids Coalition set of recommendations, and I'd be really honored to be able to work with you throughout the course of this campaign and over my tenure to really implement all of those things that you've already created a lot of vision for.
Thank you, and I'll pass it on to the next candidate, Greg.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Hodge. I have the honor to serve as the next Board of Supervisor for District 5. Thank you for acknowledging the land that we're on in the opening comments. I've had the good fortune of being a lot of times with CURYJ and Urban Peace Movement and other folks in the community when we were doing land acknowledgements and ancestral libations. So I'm honored to be here today. Glad that young people are listening to this because it's the youth voice that really is going to make a difference. With regard to term limits, I think it's really important that we re-democratize democracy. Term limits give more people an opportunity to run for office. I was listening to the earlier conversation with other candidates, and just kind of very interesting that, as I said there, you can get a medical degree in 4 years of college and 4 or 5 years of medical school and residency. So it's kind of funny to me that you could say, that somebody could say it takes that long, it takes years to understand the budget, to understand how the county operates. I think term limits, 2 to 3 terms in 4-year increments make sense. I also think term limits here in Allegheny County, in City Council makes sense for council members. I think term limits ought to make sense for members of the U.S. Congress. So, as I said the other day, I would love to see your generation of young people with the Constitutional Convention to really just change the rules of the game, to make education a civil right, to make housing a human right. All the things that we think are important in the larger community to actually have young people.
Thank you. Actually, it's on Chris, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yes, thanks for inviting me and all of us here today. Regarding term limits, I think we're possibly all in agreement here. The question came up in our earlier forum. Allegheny County is actually the only county that doesn't have term limits for supervisors. And what do we have? We have 2 people on right now that have been there, one 32 years and another one 26. And funny, when I went out and, got in this race and started talking to people in the community, they didn't know what a supervisor did, right? And that's because we haven't had anybody running really for this race. So term limits are important. It gives more people opportunity, and it also provides, there's been some grand jury report issues where there hasn't been full accountability on board of supervisors, and that is driven, without the term limits, you run into those issues. So, in any case, yeah, I support it. I also support 3 terms, 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Laurel.
Thank you so much. So I'm Laurel Punier, and I appreciate the work that you've done to put together this forum and the work that you do at CURYJ. It's really important for our community. As far as term limits go, I think 12 years is a good amount of time for term limits. It allows you to be re-elected, and it allows time for the institutional knowledge that is also important for the Board of Supervisors, and yet it still does not perpetuate the stuck ways of doing business that might not be serving the communities. And I know we can say that the community has the ability to outvote somebody, and so we shouldn't need term limits, but the reality is when an incumbent is on the ballot, most voters who are low information voters, the voters who don't show up and sit in these seats and listen to the candidates, they will vote for the person who is marked as incumbent, and it's really hard to unseat an incumbent when they're running for re-election. And so it's important to have that amount of time to allow new and fresh perspectives to come into the county. The other thing that I want to say is about the Board of Supervisors in general. And what Greg said about the Constitutional Convention, we have systems and structures that are in place in our country and in our communities that are not serving us anymore, and we need to change them. We need to change them at the federal level, but we also need to change them here in the counties. We have 5 supervisors on our board right now, and that number was established many, many years ago when the population of Alameda County was a lot lower than it is right now. Okay.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we're going to let people go on time. I hope that's okay. We're going to go to the second question.
The second question is, how do you see the connection between tough on crime policies and demands for harsher consequences impacting the super predator narratives that put a target on young people of color and dehumanize us? I'm going to first go with Greg, Nikki, Laurel, and Chris, and you can start.
Yeah, unfortunately, what I've seen over the years is there's a sort of cyclical nature of the labeling, like, super predators, endangered species, all of these labels that are used to dehumanize our brothers and sisters. And so I think that the tough on crime narrative is just what it is. It's just a narrative. And I think that what we notice is that when communities are fully resourced, they're safer. When communities are fully resourced, kids get better educations, have more job opportunities, have opportunities to have a high quality life and decent housing fit for a human being. And I think that this notion of tough on crime, and it tends to happen like really fast. So 122 CHP officers got sent to Oakland a week ago, and apparently they're done. And so, yeah, okay, well, what did that actually do? I have at least one story of somebody in my own neighborhood, other than West Oakland, a few blocks from here, and he was talking to her on the sidewalk, wasn't bothering her as far as I could tell. Somebody called the police, OPD shows up, and then turns it over to CHP. CHP then, and he has this on camera, CHP then tackles him to the ground. He was not armed. He had not threatened anybody. I mean, so yeah, we're getting tough on crime. No, we're getting tough on black boys. We get tough on brown boys. We get tough on young people who, in many cases, aren't doing anything. So the balance, there's got to, well, I'm done. Y'all got me on the soapbox. So
No, it's okay. only 10 seconds over, so I was counting you.
Okay.
You ended right
You
at 10.
count me out, all right. Oh, I'm good. Thank you.
I'm going to pass it to Nikki.
Thanks for this question. For those of you who know me, before I was on city council working as an organizer or who have worked with me as an elected official, you know that part of my orientation is about really working on the systems, trying to interrupt and dismantle the systems that cause harm, which include racism, which include economic inequality. And I have to thank all of you. I know that CURYJ and other organizations are part of the Free Our Kids Coalition. I brought forward a resolution here in Oakland to lift up those recommendations. And you all did tremendous research to put out the facts about what's really happening. And that is basically that care and restoration and resources in our community is what's going to create more community safety as opposed to harm and punishment. And so some of those facts include the fact that in Alameda County, African American youth are 7.5 times more likely than their white counterparts to be incarcerated. For Latinx youth, it's 2.5 times. And just looking at Oakland, Black youth, 113 times more likely than their white counterparts to be in juvenile hall or Camp Sweeney. And that's unacceptable. We need to invest resources. And we know that if we invest in restorative justice, the data shows that there is less recidivism for young people. And so we have to get away from that predator narrative, because we know that when we resource our communities, like Greg has said, we have safer communities, and so that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Nikki.
I'm going to pass it to Lorel.
Thank you so much for this question. Really quick, I just want to finish the thought that I didn't get to finish in the last question, which is that we have 5 supervisors on the board right now. If we increase that number, we can better represent the people in the communities, because there will be more representatives to represent the very diverse communities that we have in our county. As far as having targets on the backs of Black and brown people, I think one of the main things that we need to do is to work together as a community and have the people who are in power and who have power spend more time with people that are outside of their own communities and bring those people, give those people a voice, and come to the table and share their ideas. And the other thing that I want to talk about is upstream solutions. So community building is important, and when people in a position of authority don't fear people who are other than them, that is important. And we also need to focus on the root causes of crime. And we have systems that are set up so that people cannot survive and cannot thrive. If you can't earn a living and afford a place to live in your community where you work, you are more likely to grasp at any opportunities that you can find to survive. And if we don't look at the upstream solutions, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge issue. And I think a lot of it is driven by, number one, the limited jobs for our youth. And we see right now in the community, businesses are leaving, and that is reducing the number of jobs that are available to our youth. And that's the number one thing. In addition to that, though, people have never really come back to work at the city and all these organizations. And the more people we have in the community, this is kind of in line with what Greg was saying, is the more people we have out in the community and in the streets, it actually provides more income into small businesses, because people come into the city or come into the areas and spend money, and that provides more jobs as well. But it also reduces the amount of crime that could happen in the community. So all these things have to work together to have that. The other thing I want to mention here in the last 30 seconds is the county spends $4 billion across the county. Most of that comes here in Oakland or in this area in E5. And those funds are allocated, but there's really
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to question 3.
Just really on the Instagram, you're not on the film. I know that's like regularly received, but could you, we can't get everything the way the camera is, and I don't want to miss out on seeing you when you speak. Thank you. Okay.
All right, now we're going to move on to question 3. How would you address the imbalance of resources that we invest in law enforcement and incarceration versus our investments in paid for teachers, investments in childcare workers, Head Start staff, clinicians, like mental health therapists, doctors in our county that require more education and provide much needed resources to our community that police really cannot provide? So first we're going to go Laurel, then we're going to go to Chris, then Gregory, and then Nikki. Please begin.
So I think we definitely need to look at our budgets and how much money that we are spending on law enforcement versus what we're spending on other services, including education and healthcare. So again, I'm going to say that we need to look at upstream community-focused solutions. And if part of the upstream solution is taking care of our communities on the ground. So when we have communities that are struggling and that find themselves, because of lack of educational opportunities, because of lack of housing, they find themselves in a pipeline that is more likely to lead them into the criminal justice system. If we don't curb that at its root, then we will continue to spend money in our jails instead of spending money where the root of the problem exists. And the other thing that we need to make sure that we are doing is working with all of the organizations that currently exist to support people in their communities. So there are a lot of organizations that currently exist, and they're going in multiple different directions. And what we need at the county level is leadership to pull those organizations together so that they can effectively work with communities to provide educational services, healthcare services, and other services.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, and this is maybe a recurring item, it's related to, we spend $4 billion, 4.1 is the budget in Alameda County. Quite a bit of that actually does go to law enforcement. I think it's about 1.7, 1.5 or 7. And then the rest, roughly 1.1, 1.2 goes to social services and in these supportive areas. And obviously it's not getting to the community. It is not getting to the community. And the question is why? Is it because we have people that have just been there long term and they're not really looking at the results? I think that's a part of it, is that there are, as I mentioned, when we spend money at the county level, there are not metrics that are looked at to say, is this going to our youth? And if it is going to our youth, is it really benefiting them? Is it keeping them out off the streets, and is it providing jobs to them? Is it providing other community engagement? And I don't think anybody really knows, to be honest, because funds are allocated and then the metrics are not looked at. So that is a key proposition, key what I will do as county supervisor is hold everybody accountable that receives funding from us and make sure the results come back where the youth are given opportunity to succeed in our community, and they're not today. It's a critical issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it to Gregory.
Thank you for the question. This is an issue that we've all collectively been working on for a long time. As Nikki mentioned, a lot of us have worked with CURYJ over the years. All of us have done Families for Justice, which is families who've lost children to state-sponsored violence, Exonerated Nation, Elevator Center, and other organizations, Books Not Bars. I'm old enough to remember when Van Jones was still at Books Not Bars. I mean, it's these issues keep coming back, and I think it's because we haven't transformed systems. We need to close youth prisons, and this is an issue that CURYJ has been working on for a long time. The Los Angeles model in Los Angeles County has taken a really good turn, which is that they're closing youth prisons, they're turning their system into a youth development system countywide, and I think that's what we should be doing here. For every dollar that we spend on prevention, we save $7 on systems. And I think that, over the years, we went from $250,000 a year to keep one kid incarcerated at CURYJ, California Youth Authority. Now it's up to about $400,000 because the prison guard unions are powerful in Sacramento. Their numbers haven't increased even though there's way fewer beds in the state system. So as we move young people into the county of Alameda, the Camps Community, JJC, other places where we're continuing to do work, we ought to be working toward community care, making sure that kids who have nonviolent offenses are actually in the community, and that kids who have more serious violent offenses get the supports and help they need before they can be released back into the community.
Thank you, February. And then lastly, I'll pass it to Nikki. You can begin.
Thank you for this question. As it relates to our budget, I will take an approach as a supervisor, as I have as the president of the Oakland City Council, which is recognizing that our budget should express our values, it should be transparent, it should be equitable, and it should deliver results. I think that you all, as youth organizations, as the Free Our Kids Coalition, have done tremendous work around how we could realign our budget. And again, that is moving from a sort of an incarceration model to a care model. One of the things that would be really important to me as a supervisor is to work towards the full implementation of SB 823, and that is transitioning the Department of Juvenile Justice into a system where we're really caring for our young people. And we see the data and the results. For example, it costs $500,000 to incarcerate a young person, and 1 out of 3 individuals is reconvicted. If you look at a restorative justice approach, only 5% recidivism among folks who have been involved in violent or serious crimes, including robberies. And that's a one-time cost of $4,500. So you get a much, much better outcome for a fraction of the cost by really saturating care and healing with our young people.
Thank you, everyone, for answering these questions. I have one more question, and since we are ahead of time, we have 2 more, I'm sorry, we have 2 more questions, but because we're still ahead of time, we're also going to be adding a closing statement. There is also an increase in transitional age youth ending up in Santa Rita and the adult system. What are your plans to end incarceration of youth and treating youth like adults? How will you hold the county sheriff's office accountable to keeping people safe and healthy in Santa Rita jail, especially our transitional age people? First, we're going to do Gregory, then we're going to do Nikki, Laurel, and lastly, Chris. And Gregory, you can begin.
Thank you. I think that it makes no sense to have young people incarcerated with adults in the general adult population, especially until, if and when our system ever becomes a rehabilitative system versus a punitive one. So young people deserve a second chance. A lot of times, if you're a middle-class kid who comes from a different community, you never end up at home. You end up with your parents, with a community worker. You get an opportunity to make choices that, if you make a bad choice, you get an opportunity to do it, so to speak. I think that what's really important at Santa Rita is an independent oversight body made up of citizens who are not connected to the county structure, folks who have independent counsel, folks who have the opportunity to subpoena witnesses and do the investigations and actually hold our sheriff's department, just like all of us, hold us accountable. There ought to be an independent body to be able to do that, consistent with state law. And I think that this Board of Supervisors has really delayed way too long. When I stood out with people who have lost children, who have lost loved ones to in-custody deaths in Santa Rita about a year ago, a demonstration in front of the county administration building, it hurt my heart because there are people who couldn't hear about their loved ones for a week when they had been killed in custody, died in custody. So I think there's a real huge, big issue. Independent oversight would make a huge difference. And then the last thing I'd say is reimagining adult justice with the proposal that Supervisor Baye put out there. Makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm going to pass it to Nikki.
Thank you for this question. I think we have to recognize that young people are our most valuable asset. And I also say that as a mom to a teenage daughter. And we have to absolutely center our work with young people around care and healing. And so youth should not be treated like adults in our criminal legal system. In terms of supporting transitional age youth, I've been working since about 2020 with a coalition at OUSD and other agencies to create a career tech education hub and housing for transitional age youth. That would be at the former OUSD administrative building, which is in the district I currently represent. So that's an opportunity for housing for up to 150 teen youth, for education, for training, for job development. Those are the type of things that we should invest in. In terms of Santa Rita, it's absolutely unacceptable that so many people have died in jail and that we are incarcerating people who actually need mental health treatment and prevention and care. So I also support the recommendations developed under Supervisor Baye to reimagine adult justice. That includes oversight of the sheriff and of the jail. It also includes expanding our prevention and treatment facilities and beds in a community setting and outside of the jail setting.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Laurel, and please let me know if any candidates would like for me to repeat the question as well. If you can read it.
Thank you for the question. As a mom of a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, I can say that there is no circumstance when a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old should be treated as an adult in our prison system. A 14-year-old is a child, a 16-year-old is a child. If they are acting in a way that society thinks is inappropriate, then give them help. Don't send them to jail. As far as, and the ways to do that is to funnel more money into our programs that are currently set up to help provide health care and health care in conjunction with our education system. As far as oversight of Santa Rita Jail goes, I was a supporter of AB 1185. It's been 2.5 years since the Board of Supervisors said that they supported AB 1185, which allows for an independent oversight commission over the Sheriff's Department, and yet we have not seen that commission formed yet. I believe that it should be made of independent representatives in the community, representatives from organizations like CURYJ, representatives of other organizations that are doing work with reimagining our justice system. And it should have an independent counsel separate from the county's office.
Thank you. And then lastly, Chris.
Thank you. I think we're all in agreement here. I like to say, I've heard this before, care first, jails last. It's important for the community, especially we can't be jailing our youth, and there's also mental health issues that are impacted here. We just haven't, obviously we've not managed these programs that are supposed to help our youth and help mental health properly. And it may sound like the same thing, but it's endemic, it seems, across the county, whether it's with our youth or with our homeless, it seems to be the same problem. We're spending a lot of money, $4 billion, yet we're not really having any impact. This has been going on for years. I agree with Greg here about the Independent Oversight Committee. The things that have been happening in jails in Santa Rita, it's it's unbelievable, right? That somebody could have passed in a cell for days and not be known for days. There's obviously a problem there. So I agree that we need to properly fund and properly allocate those funds and have oversight to make sure these situations do not continue.
Thank you. So last question, reminder, we will have a closing as well. So what will you do to promote climate justice in our county of Alameda County? First, we're going to do Nikki, Gregory, then we're going to do Laurel, and close out with Chris. So Nikki, you can begin.
Thank you for that question. And I applaud young people for recognizing that we're in climate chaos and we have to absolutely protect our environment. As a county supervisor, there's a number of things that we can do, and there's a number of things I've done as a city council member. One is making sure that we have a plan. So I would take the lessons from working on Oakland's Equitable Climate Action Plan into the county so that we can update the county's plan. Part of that includes having resilience hubs. I'm really proud in the district I represent in Oakland and Chinatown and the downtown area. We secured funding to create a resilience hub at Lincoln Square Park. And that is going to be a place where across generations there'll be services 24/7 for our community, as well as when there are emergencies. There's also an opportunity to recognize that our transportation and infrastructure are some of the largest producers of greenhouse gas, and so we can make sure that as we update our buildings, our county vehicles, that they're clean and green and we're contributing less to pollution. And I think it's also important to have an environmental justice approach. I served on the board of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network and worked with frontline communities. We have to also make sure that whether you're by the port of Oakland or other places where you're impacted by pollution and other environmental issues like lead housing, that we're absolutely making sure we're putting resources into turning that impact around. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Gregory. You can begin.
This issue, especially for our young folks who are in the room, who are watching this on the live stream, this issue is probably the most important issue of your generation. It's existential. It matters around climate change and sea level rise, and we live here in the Bay Area. Like all of the things that go into this, the concerns around this. And then there's a sort of intersectionality around racial justice and equity and all these other issues that we care about. When I talk to my 15-year-old, she has a certain attitude about the future because of climate change. She is not as hopeful as she would otherwise be. And so I think that's something that we ought to, the quote adults in charge, ought to do what Greta has said, and basically turn over all these systems and make sure that the plan is continually livable. There's a plan that got promulgated back in 2014 that's on the county's website, and it calls for things like, a green job infrastructure. It calls for new housing, building construction that's based on all electric. I just think that the urgency of this situation, the urgency of this particular issue has not been fully appreciated. So I think that young folks who are voting, make sure that you vote in people at all levels of government who really care about these issues, and make sure that you get involved in public office at some point in your lives so you can make a real difference.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm going to pass it now to Laurel. You can begin.
Thank you so much. So I think we're all in agreement that we have a climate crisis and that we need to do whatever we can to mitigate it. I think one of the biggest issues that we have is that in order to mitigate the climate crisis, we have to make sacrifices. There are things that are convenient for us and that we have gotten used to over decades that we need to shift away from, and we need to put in the systems to communities to the table, that we are going to the communities where people are less able to come to us, and we are making sure that we hear those voices. Otherwise, our solutions will be biased toward the people who have privilege and money, and it's been the entire history of our country where our solutions have been biased to the people who have privilege and money, and that's time to change.
Thank you. And lastly, Chris.
Thank you. Yes, obviously a huge issue. There's some short-term things we can do that we have in place but have been sort of broken recently. So number one is the CPUC at the state level, they discontinued incentives for solar and allowing people to basically sell their additional energy generation from solar back into the system. So that has essentially killed the industry. Before, people in all over our community could be putting solar on their roofs or solar in their yards and being able to sell that back, and it's almost come to an end or a stop right now, hurting the entire industry, and it's key to have that. The second is transportation. So our transportation system is getting people out of their cars and into buses or BART, etc. But nobody wants to do that today, in particular here in the Bay Area, because BART is viewed as unsafe. The number or the ridership is down significantly. So we have to get it together and make that a much more safer transit system again, so people start using it again. And those are the two simple things we can do immediately to try to affect and begin to impact and benefit on the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. And then for closing statements, we're just going to do the same lineup. So, so left to right. Okay, thank you. You can begin.
Well, thank you so much to CURYJ and to everyone who put on this forum. I mean, young people, you know what's up. You know what's up. So you know what the future should be about, and you all are doing the work, doing the research, doing the organizing, and I appreciate that. I'm really proud, as I've been an organizer, as I've been an elected official, to have worked together with you to make sure that we continue the open fund for children and youth. That's $18 million in youth programming. We work together to pass Youth Vote. We need to implement it at the county, but we will make sure that 16 to 17-year-olds have the right to vote. We've been able to expand violence prevention. We now have violence intervention and prevention teams in 7 of our open high schools from working together. And as your county supervisor, I will continue to work hand in hand with you. Because again, you all know what's up, you know what we need to do. We need to respect your voices and actually make sure that all of the supervisors are partnering with you. So I work together with you to implement Reimagining Youth Justice, to make sure that our budget reflects our values of care and restoration, to make sure that housing is available to transitional age youth, and that young people have an actual opportunity to own a home. I'm really proud to be endorsed by the labor movement, by Elevate for Center Action, East Bay Action, Open Rising Action, ACE, and a host of other folks. And I am walking every single, well, not every single day, we are walking, we are calling every single day. So for those of you who want to get active, I encourage you to talk with me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you go.
Thank you. Thanks for holding this, and thank you for inviting us all here today. My big focus here in this campaign is, I'm fed up with what's going on in our community. It's not safe for our families, our children, our small businesses across our community. And in particular with small businesses, and there's Agave uptown, down the street, they've been burglarized / robbed 21 times. And that's just not right. They cannot survive. Small businesses, generally owned by our minority and immigrant communities, violent people in our community. And they are committing a lot of these actions that are hurting our residents and hurting our businesses. And we have to swing back a little bit and be a little bit tougher to allow them to know that, hey, you're not going to come here and destroy the small businesses. Because what do small businesses do? They provide youth the jobs. They help youth keep off the streets. They help provide jobs so they can survive in this extremely expensive economy that we have here in the Bay Area. And that's my primary focus for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Great.
Cool. Thanks again to all of you for being here today, for CURYJ's leadership, showing courage. And I just want to encourage all of us, and particularly our younger folks that are participating in this process, to use your courageous choice. Use your choice as well. Some of you will choose not to participate at all, not to vote, to sort of cynically say none of this is any different. Some of you will actually get involved. You'll knock on some doors, you'll work one of these campaigns, you'll get involved in the civic life of your community. And I have to say, over a 40-year career, I've tried to make good, courageous choices myself, with starting the Freedom Schools program back in the 90s. Some of you all maybe have gone to a Freedom School and benefited from that. As an Oakland school board member, it was a resolution we passed almost 20 years ago to get SROs and police off of school campuses. It got reversed because of some legal problems, but that was the first time we did that. I was the first administrator of Oakland Fund for Children and Youth. I'm working currently with RISEs. I just want to bring your attention to this week's Oakland Post because it's really interesting that almost all of the issues that we've been talking about are on here. You can go to postnewsgroup.com, but follow the money. So it says, who are the top donors in the Alameda County District 5 Supervisors race? Almost half has come from us, just 30 sources. Follow the money. Look at the article about black home ownership in California.
A little bit later, I think it's not later, hopefully soon, traffic, rain. So we just wanted to thank all of you guys again for being here on time. We're going to do the order in a rapid order. Each will get 1.5 minutes. Currently, we built in our schedule no closing, no opening. However, if we get through everything like we have previously, we will do closing statements. I'm going to ask the first question in the order. We'll start with Dan, Sandre, Jalanka's not here, so we'll skip her, Jesse, and then. First question. How would you support Oakland schools and help address our housing, our mental health, and healthcare crisis? Yes, absolutely. Okay. How would you support Oakland schools and help address our housing, mental health, and healthcare crisis?
Thank you for that question. First of all, thank you all for putting this event on. As a city council member here in Oakland, I've been a good partner with the school district. I helped create with them a program, a supportive program to reduce chronic absence kids in our schools. You can have all the great teachers and all the great programs you want. If your kids aren't in school, we're failing. And so we have a program not in a punitive way, but in a supportive way that I helped create a few years ago and still exists today. In terms of housing, I'm very proud that EPCO, the leading East Bay organization on affordable housing, has identified me as one of the affordable housing champions, and will continue to be the affordable housing champion locally and statewide on issues to help teachers, to help all our workforce, our very low-income residents, our homeless. We absolutely must have affordable housing, and I'm strong in the to do so, and will continue to do so as a state legislator. No question. Mental health, we need to make sure that mental health care is the same as health. Can't be said. There are laws to suggest that, but those laws are not being implemented the way that they need to be. I will be a passionate advocate for mental health care reform. I grew up in my immediate family who had serious mental health challenges. I know what it means to have someone in the family with those challenges. Mental health care must be considered health care tried and true, and we want to absolutely focus on that. Health care reform overall, I'm a strong supporter of single-payer health care, and I will continue to be a fighter for single-payer health care and be part of a working group of legislators to create a transition plan to actually make it happen. That's it.
Thank you, right on.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. question. We just got Jalaka, I'll just repeat it and then we'll go to the next candidate. Jalaka, I'm gonna have you, you're going to go after him, unless you want time, I can rearrange it. Okay. So I'll have Jalaka go last instead of Catherine. The question is, and I'll go to Sandra. How would you support open schools and help address our housing, mental health, and healthcare crisis?
Well, thank you very much for the question.
Speak to the mic a little bit.
Thank you, sorry. Thank you very much for the question. When I was elected to the State Assembly, I made a promise to the people of Oakland that I would help Oakland schools move from state control to local control. That was my very first bill when I entered the State Assembly. I was very supportive of Oakland schools throughout my tenure. I served on the Budget Committee in the Assembly, and I was the one, even though we had a budget deficit at the time, I continued to fight against the people that tried to reduce the funds that went to our education system. I believe that our schools should be funded in the top 10% of the nation. I think it should be our priority. I'm interested in making sure that we return to redevelopment funds to help our housing situation. I was a fighter for these funds when I was in the legislature. We used them to address the homeless. We used them for first-time homeowner purchases. We used them to help with senior housing. And I think those things are very, very important to them. Healthcare, I believe that healthcare is a right, and I will continue to fight to make sure that there's accessible healthcare. And our schools can play an important role. I think we need to have school nurses and social worker assistants on our campuses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go with Jesse, if you're ready.
Well, also, thank you so much for putting this together. I just want to acknowledge the young leaders for your civic engagement. I think it's really important to hear your priorities. But how to support open schools? Well, first, I think we need to make sure that we can sustain programs that were funded over the last few years with one-time money. The school district is considering some pretty significant cuts, programs that were funded with one-time state funding, We need to sustain these investments for mental health services, for other school-based services. And we can do that by reforming Proposition 13 to close corporate loopholes, by trying to achieve more equity in our state's tax policies. We create billions of dollars to increase our investment in public education. And I want to lift up one project that I think is particularly exciting, the Hub project at the former OUSD headquarters that is being led by a number of people, including Delphine in the audience here. That's really focused on not just supporting the needs of transition-age youth, but really providing wraparound services and connecting young people to college and career readiness. And in Berkeley, we worked in strong partnership with the school district on a collective impact partnership called Vision 2020 that's been focused on addressing racial predictability in student achievement, and not just in terms of what's happening in the school, but the investments, the millions of dollars of investments that we're making in our city. And I want to make sure that we prioritize equity and how the state is allocating its education funding. On housing, we're facing a housing affordability crisis. Are we done?
Yes.
Okay. Housing and healthcare are basically right. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Catherine, and then last, John.
So when it comes to schools, I will say that it was stunning to see how, not stunning, it was not a surprise actually that Oakland was able to attract so many more teachers to come teach in the district after they won appropriate wage increases so that, we're actually staffing up the schools. That's one, and I think that when we want to have teachers that are representative of the students that they're teaching, let's make it possible for people to afford to teach in the schools. I think so that gets to the bigger issue of funding. We have to reform Prop 13. Our schools absolutely have to have the funding with that. I think teachers and students and all the professionals in the schools can do the work they need to do. When it comes to mental health care and equity in the schools, we've got to actually respect the wisdom that students bring. There should be students guiding how we spend our resources. There's so much trauma that our students experience. And when it comes to mental health care, who better to inform how that care gets directed than those who most need it? Housing is health care, housing is mental health care. We've got to keep people in their homes. We have to keep homes affordable. And we've got to build housing that people actually can afford. Workforce housing, I know it's challenging to come up with the funding for that, but we absolutely can when we take investment in housing not for profit, but for people.
Wonderful, thank you. Joanne? Absolutely. How would you support Oakland schools and help address our housing, mental health, and healthcare crisis? Tyler will start.
Okay. Good. Hello, everyone. Like that, as you heard. I really believe that. Thank you. I really do believe that action speaks louder than words. All of us have really great answers to this question, but for me, action speaks louder than words. During the reparations for students, I was there with you all. When teachers went on strike, I was there walking the lines. I gave $5,000 in order for families to be able to eat and provide child care and things like that. I am a mental health provider, recently retired. I did wraparound services for 23 years in Contra Costa County, working as a mental health provider for children and families. So I've been doing the work and making sure that the school system, providing partnerships, is incredibly important. And so I'm one of the partners that work with families, children through school districts. And so I believe that we need community schools, and with that, again, partnerships with mental health services like I was providing as a wraparound facilitator for 23 years. And through community schools, we limit the amount of absenteeism. We need to support teachers. We need to support our children, not just not just giving them titles like this child needs special ed, but really providing the support that a child needs. And housing, I believe that we need worker housing, social housing. I'm a corporate free candidate, and so you can trust me to do exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you. And just a reminder, when the timer goes off, typically there's a lot of only 10 seconds after the timer. And I'm counting those in my head, and I'll just come up with you guys off if that's okay. Second question. In the order here, will first be Catherine, Jesse, Sandra, Javonda, and Dan. Second question goes like this. San Pablo is attempting to build a 42,000 square feet cop training facility and invest $44 million to recruit and train police and ICE, among other law enforcement as well. They will also have a shooting range. And recently, the state sent 120 CHP officers, as anyone in Oakland here knows, to supposedly help with the crime, even though they can be reckless and bring more violence. And there has not been any data on whether or not those 5 days actually did anything or not. So how do you feel about this proposed cop campus and the state sending the CHP to Oakland? Are these the best ways to make our community safe? And the timer will start.
Communities are really, I think, feeling really upset about crime. I understand maybe what, those who all officers are trying to get at by, bringing 120 more cops in and making a big show of, like, look, we've got to have law and order. But honestly, when we spend $500 million a year to incarcerate County County, the vast majority of them are black and brown. We have tripled the spending on cops in the last 4 years, and we are seeing things not actually getting better. It just feels like building a cop camp in San Pablo is more of the same that hasn't worked, and potentially more of an attack on black and brown people, black and brown youth. I think that what makes our communities safer are actually those communities that have more resources, not just more police. And by resources, I families that have the resources of decent jobs, job stability. It means good schools, that are community schools, that are wraparound services, good mental health care, that youth and everybody feel invested in. The real possibility of careers and jobs and futures for those students who go through schools. And I think also staffing up all the safety personnel that make police work, which is difficult, easier. We're talking about nurses, teachers, social workers, mental health care workers, and the like. I think that's a better investment of our time and real possibilities for rehabilitation for those who are impacted by the criminal justice system.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Jesse, if you're ready.
Yeah, well, $43 million headquarters and training facility for Department 59 officers, that just doesn't add up. And I think the money can be better spent on community involved policing, mental health crisis response, funding schools, and other types of upstream investments that we know will improve public safety in communities. This may be an unpopular position, but I do think that the state's decision to provide 120 C3 officers and sustain presence in Oakland is a good thing. It's resulted in 71 arrests, and it's actually helping deal with some of the organized crime that is victimizing businesses and neighborhoods in Oakland. I don't think that just putting more police on the street solves our public safety problems long term. And certainly the state spends way more than it should in our corrections budget, money that could be going towards increasing our investment in education, violence prevention, jobs, the things that we know actually have positive outcomes. So that's what I'm going to fight for the state's side.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Thank you. Well, I've said from the beginning of this campaign that we face a uncontrollable and unacceptable crime wave in our city. I was born in the city of Oakland, and I remember when, as a child, I had the freedom to play in the parks and to ride my bike through the city. My parents didn't worry about my safety. Today, parents worry about the safety of their young people. And so this uncontrollable crime wave has to be addressed. We also have to be smart about how do we come up with a safe environment. At this point, criminals feel that they can have their way in the city of Oakland because there are not enough officers to have foot patrol, bike patrol, and the like. And we also need to make sure if we're going to graduate officers for the city of Oakland and the city of Berkeley, you need academies. And I think that what they're trying to do with this project is develop an academy whereby we can get the officers that we need. The recruitment of those officers, I think, need to include an outreach to our community so that the people that are policing, constitutionally policing in our community are people that come from our community. That some of those people that want to participate in law enforcement can be the people that are sensitive to the needs in our community and are able to respond, in the spirit of constitutional policing, and also bring justice, social justice to our community and make us all feel safe.
Thank you. Javonka?
I believe that the best way to address crime and poverty in cities is not by putting more police officers on the street. And I can say that because as a Richmond City Council member, that's what we did. We didn't increase police presence. What we did is we addressed the root causes of crime. We addressed the root causes of poverty. And I'm really proud to have been a part of that movement to address the root causes of crime and poverty. And that was by increasing the minimum wage, by having a ban-the-box policy that helped to provide employment for people coming back from incarceration. We did ceasefire walks. I was able to fund the Office of Neighborhood Safety that actually hired folks who came back from incarceration and paid them, in essence, to not be involved in crime. And it sounded crazy, not like that crazy radical city, but it worked. Richmond is no longer on the list of worst, most crime cities. So that's not the way you address crime. You have to deal with the root causes, and I'm proud to have been a part of that cause. So what's happening in San Pablo, in Oakland, I am afraid because I saw what happened in Berkeley, under the mayor's leadership, all that police that
Thank you. Lastly,
respectfully.
Ben.
Thank you so much. We absolutely need a comprehensive approach to public safety. Everybody that we talk to who's an expert in public safety agrees with that. In terms of that facility, I'm more concerned about what they're teaching in that facility. If it's going to be an academy facility, probably for just not for beyond San Pablo, Costa County, they have to teach de-escalation techniques, restorative justice, how to not racially profile. If what's being taught is appropriate and connected to the community, then the campus is going to happen, it probably needs to happen. But if what's being taught is not the right thing, it's not going to help at all. Investigations of serious crimes are a key part of reducing crime. The thing that will cause people to deter crime from happening, that deters crime from happening, is the fear of getting arrested. Right? And if you want to move people to diversion programs and intervention programs, you have to identify who they are. So we have to fund investigation of serious crimes and get help to do so. Rehabilitation in our state prisons. I took a tour of San Quentin several years ago, and the rehab programs in San Quentin, they work. They reduce recidivism, but most other prisons in the state don't have them. We have to move to all the state prisons in a big way. Investment in reentry services. We have to fund at the county and local level much more investment in reentry services as the next step after rehabilitation in our state institutions. And getting guns off the street. I offer the law here in Oakland to ban those guns and the parts that make them. We have to do more at the state level and federal level to get guns off the street. People who should not be having guns, and let's get them off the street as we can, and support our restorative justice efforts in schools and outside of schools. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have only 3 questions left, and I think we're doing out of time. So let's just get to it. So number 3, we're going to go with Yolanda first, then Jesse, Dan, Catherine. Third question. Where do you see people struggling in our community after COVID-19? In addition, how did you respond to the impacts COVID-19 had inside jails, prison, and detention centers? If you can, please give concrete examples.
Well, people are still, the minute and a half that I have, it's such a good question, and I have an extensive answer to that. But people are still struggling with the effects of COVID. And I'm really proud to have a lot of us on the City Council creating policies such as making sure that we have a moratorium on evictions, a moratorium on rent increases. These are the same things that are continuing to happen. People are struggling with paying rent. People are struggling to buy food. People are struggling to get the mental health services that they need. The impacts continue in so many ways. I'm also very proud that during the pandemic, I was able to reward the workers, the essential workers, people who had to go in. I was fortunate enough to have been able to do my work on video, but not everybody was able to do that. And so, as a AC Transit director, I make sure that the workers got what we call appreciation pay, really making sure that people are rewarded for doing a good job and making sure that everyone was able to get to work when they needed. The impacts inside jails are pretty horrendous. PPE materials weren't given to folks, weren't given necessarily to the workers as well. And I tell you what, I don't always have all of the answers, but I look to the community for the answers, those who are impacted by these issues, and I create solutions together, because that's how elected officials should work. Listen to you and create solutions with you.
Thank you. Jesse?
Well, I support efforts to reduce crowding in jails during COVID. And elected officials who express positions on that. And frankly, sheriffs did a very bad job of keeping inmates and staff safe. Just like I think they're doing a terrible job of providing mental health insurance for jails. Federal consent decree will have to take, I think, our basic steps to make sure access to mental health care and make sure that we're treating inmates in a humane way. And I have to say, our mental health system is broken in the state. We need to increase our investment in community-based mental health services, including our prison. But on COVID, the people that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic looked like us. And Black and brown people were the ones who contracted and died of COVID at greater numbers. Not a surprise, there's a correlation between those people that don't have access to health care and those because that should be year-round. I support making sure we continue to put in place strong health measures, because the impact of the emergency, we're still dealing with it, although it's not as serious as it was. And to help you work through this pandemic, some of the lowest case rates and highest vaccination rates in any city in the United States.
Thank you. Dan, you ready?
Thank you very much. I had regular conversations with the county public health officer, not just the weekly ones I had with everybody, but I had several conversations with them to see what more Oakland can be doing as the largest city in Alameda County. And we took some actions. We took some actions that other cities in the county were not necessarily doing, and the county wasn't going to do overall to protect our residents, whether it's masking, vaccination efforts, and outreach. Oakland actually, surprisingly to some people, did actually a pretty good job compared to many other large cities in terms of having a fairly high vaccination rate and getting masks out and food out to people who need it. I was involved in food distribution, recruiting others to volunteer in food distribution, getting masks to people who didn't have them, getting hand sanitizer to people who didn't have them. We did a lot of that in Oakland, and I took a lead to recruit others to help with those efforts. One of the things that the state prison system did, which was just stupid, was to, once the COVID outbreak happened, and there were some outbreaks in a couple of prisons, they started moving people to other prisons. Can you think of anything more stupid than that? I mean, they were actually moving people who had COVID to other prisons, which spread COVID throughout the entire prison system. That was basically a ridiculous thing. More people died because of that, and that was like the most craziest stupid thing that the state could have done at the time. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. So anyway, we need to support our jails, support our prison system in terms of making sure they provide health care, mental health care, all the health care they need, and making sure that there's enough safety measures that are required in place. I'm a strong advocate of rental protections. I co-author the eviction moratorium, and I will always be a fighter for renters no matter what. Thank you.
Wonderful. Catherine?
Sure. Yeah, there's nothing like the global pandemic to expose the real risks in who has and who does not have. And that's kind of like what's in reverse proportion to who's absolutely necessary in this society. So I represent a union of now over 32,000 workers, all of them frontline essential workers who work in one of the largest hospital systems in this state, as well as on the campuses. And heading the pandemic, the University of California, our employer, proposed to lay off 3,000 of our workers, and we fought back to make sure they laid off not one single worker. And in fact, we have fought to ensure that they should be getting the kind of hazard they were due for going in the face of danger without enough PPE. And I know that these are the conditions that public sector workers across the country, around the globe, across the state face, right? And largely Black and brown workers who show up every single day to do incredibly dangerous work. Yes, including in prisons and jails. It also reflects, how little we value people who are incarcerated, right, for all the dangerous conditions there. The impacts are ongoing from the pandemic in terms of healthcare, mental health care, and housing. We have not recovered, and a big part to that recovery, though, I think, is a public workforce that needs, honestly, that needs to be funded, and that unfortunately is worked out.
Thank you. Sandra?
Thank you very much. My family, like all families, had very serious losses during COVID, and most of us are still trying to deal with that. The post-COVID economy is very tough for a lot of people. That's why one of the reasons I'm concerned about this growing crime wave is because we're losing so many of our businesses. These businesses are providing local jobs for people as they're trying to bring their families back together again. And so we have to get this local crime wave under control. In reference to the people that are in prisons, the best thing we can do for those folks is make sure that once they're released, that there are re-entry programs that allow pathways to employment. When I served as deputy mayor in Oakland, and during a period of time when Oakland had a successful ceasefire program, and we made sure that it was successful, that people that were coming into the city, that we met with them, we met with the police chief on a weekly basis, we met with the managers of our ceasefire program on a weekly basis, and we met with businesses to make sure that those who are trying to reenter our society, we're trying to be successful, that they had an opportunity. We made sure that we had, 3,000 summer jobs for folks. And that's the kind of attention that has to be paid to folks, this pathway to employment and credibility.
Thank you. We're keeping time. We're going to skip the fourth question because it's actually similar to one which you guys have already addressed. So we're going to go straight into our fifth question and then do closing statements to keep it fair. For this question, we're actually going to do Jesse first, Sandra, Catherine, Jolanda, and Dan. Okay. In California, people convicted of certain crimes are prohibited from applying for certain licenses, such as franchisee licenses, insurance bonds through the DMV to buy and sell cars, for example, and various other forms of employment, regardless of education level. What initiatives, policies, legislation would you propose to rectify this egregious transgression of economic equity for those returning to society to have supposedly paid their debt? This came directly from Congress.
Excellent question. The reality is that we are not supporting people as they were entering society, and I was very proud to author Berkeley's policy to ban blocks for rental housing, because we had done outreach to people who were living on the streets and living in vehicles. Some of whom were previously incarcerated and were not able to rent housing in their city because they were prohibited, because landlords were had a box that you had to check about whether you previously were incarcerated. Oakland passed a similar policy. The state has taken steps to pass that policy. We need to remove all barriers for people as they're entering society, whether it's housing, whether it's jobs, to make sure that people are able to be successful. So I support efforts to expand voting rights. I support efforts to end forced servitude in our jails. I certainly support efforts to remove barriers for people to be able to get certain licenses, to get access to certain jobs, to get certain rights, given that we have paid their debt to society. But I think what we have to focus on is how we are transforming our prison system to one that's focused on rehabilitation, not just how we're ensuring the basic human rights of people in our jails, but how we're investing in jobs, how we're setting up people for access to housing, how we're making sure that people, as they come back, are supported and successful. And Senator Skinner's done a great deal on trying to really push for transforming our criminal justice system in California. I want to be a fierce champion for criminal justice reform in the state Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I served on the Assembly Budget Committee, and I remember hearings we had on budgets for prison building. And one of the issues was the question of why do we need so many? And it had to do with recidivism. And that has to do with the fact that we don't have real rehabilitation. And we need to have rehabilitation in our prisons. And once someone has paid paid back society by spending this time after they made a mistake, then we have to make sure the resources exist for them to be successful. If we don't want them to make the same kind of mistakes, then we have to provide opportunities. And I believe that the business community, for instance, can be helpful. If people that are coming back in the community and the business community take them in and can allow them to get a position, then maybe we ought to have a tax break, for people that will help and let's develop incentives to make sure that those that are returning back in our community not only have the initial benefit of programs like C-Fire that we were able to successfully do, but also that the community engages in understanding the benefit to our community from someone who has had real rehabilitation and also has a pathway to employment once they return to our community.
Thank you. Catherine?
I think that, time served should be time served. That's it. We've done it. So everything after that should be about all the things that made for, welcoming and supporting somebody coming back to a place that they can call home, that is stable and secure. I believe that it was SB that's done, and it prohibits them having that thing that keeps somebody from being able to get jobs, being able to have access, get the licenses, get access to housing, all the things that make for recreating a stable life, and enable somebody to, really grow and contribute instead of being at greater risk for returning back to the carceral system. So I think we've got to look at it systemically. Let's call time served just that, and people will.
Thank you. Jamalka? Are you ready?
I too believe that if you serve your time, then you paid your debt. I am, again, just really proud to work with the Safe Return Project. That's a nonprofit in Richmond that helps formerly incarcerated individuals. And so what they came to me and said, we're having a hard time getting jobs. And so again, I sat down and listened, and together we were the ones, when I was on city council, we wrote the first ban-the-box policy in California. We did that. And as a result of Richmond's leadership, the state then followed. And so by taking that box, that's a question that asked, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Which of course you could just get your application thrown away. We took that question off of city employment applications, and later the state followed with private. But not only that, it wasn't just for jobs, I also banned the box for housing as well, because people need a chance. People deserve a second chance. And so I want to be able to champion these kinds of policies that support people who are coming back from incarceration. I believe that people should not have issues finding jobs, should not have issues voting. 90% of people coming back from incarceration are going to be returning to their communities, so they should be able to vote while they're there. Why wait till they come back? Because they have a stake in their communities. I believe that folks should have support, starting businesses in particular. When we talk about the cannabis industry, which a lot of folks are in jail for, they should be the ones that are given priority around these types of licenses.
Wonderful. Then licenses, insurances, bonds, through the DMV to buy and sell cars as an example, and various other forms of employment, regardless of their education level. What initiatives, policy, and/or legislation would you propose to rectify this egregious transgression of economic inequity for those returning to society? How is it supposed to be paid their debt?
We need to do an entire inventory of all those laws to see which ones, I'm sure most of them, can be just scrapped. Most of these are antiquated laws. There could be an exception. Maybe somebody who's convicted of child abuse or sexual assault should not be running a child care center. But those are rare exceptions. By and large, most of those laws should be eliminated, and people should be brought back into society in a supportive re-entry way. If we're serious about re-entry can't just be a buzzword. It has to be real. And so if it's real, if you want to make it real, you have to have the services and the welcoming back that we can. I was one of the authors of the Fair Chance Housing Ordinance in Oakland. I supported ban the box for a long time. We had it in Oakland before I was on the council, so we still have it. It's very important that we continue these policies at the statewide level. In terms of, I want a policy that people who are working in prison and for an outside entity should get paid at least minimum wage, not $1.50 an hour, if that. So let's pay people a real wage if they're working for someone. Slave labor is supposed to have gone, 150 years ago. Well, actually, it still exists in our prison system. So let's get rid of that and have real help people learn those skills, but in a way that shows respect and dignity as well. I've been a long-time supporter, as I mentioned earlier, for rehabilitation in our state prisons. And we have to do that at more than just one prison. We need it at all of our state prisons. And then we need the reentry services and the welcoming policies and the breaking down of barriers once people get out of the criminal justice system. And of course, we also want to promote prevention to begin with. Voting rights, everything anybody said, I pretty much agree with all the other statements. So I think we're largely in agreement. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to this? Sure. We'll just go ahead. And you'll have a bit.
Okay, great. First off, thank you, CURYJ, for the work that you do, the leadership that you bring to the communities, and the leadership you bring, honestly, to the work that so many people with so much more power than you formally have. I think, talking about power resides in the people that come together and make their power and exercise it. I'm not a politician, I am a labor union leader. We have over 32,000 workers and 2 million beyond that. But we're really a diverse group, majority black and brown workers, but a large group of people who have had to learn to trust each other, work across difference so that we can act in solidarity and take incredible risks together to win historic wages, job security, our health care, to build our families and communities. And we have built community together, not trying to pretend that there aren't differences, but celebrating the differences we have, and then understanding the historical roots and the realities that the impacts of what differences have, understanding that when we're talking about economic justice, we're also talking about gender and racial justice, and we have to build those things in that way. And that, I think, is with that clarity and that approach, we have to understand that that's how we legislate, that is how we actually change things. And when the ability for communities to build their own power to keep winning.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm in my third term as an Oakland City Council member, and I have a strong record of progressive accomplishments in a way that gets things done. When the coalition wanted to create a independent civilian police commission, it came to me and make it happen. It wasn't easy, but I know how to get difficult policies passed, and I've done that at the state level as well. When a group of councilors of Just Cause wanted a tenant protection ordinance here in Oakland, which I strongly supported, it came to me and we got it done. It wasn't unanimous, but we got it done, and that was one of the strongest in the state. I know that being a state legislator, it's not a hypo proposition. It's not about press releases or fancy speeches. The real work to be an effective state legislator is the intricate, often behind-the-scenes, tedious work on very complex policy. And that's the kind of work that I'm very good at. If you look at my record as a city council member, or my record before that, before I became an elected official, as a public interest environmental advocate in Sacramento, you'll see that I know how to engage in complex policy, I know how to work with people of all different backgrounds, and I know how to actually get things done. And that's what I'm looking to do here. I will be a leader when it comes to affordable housing, renter protections. I'm a strong advocate of renter protections, a whole range of issues, environmental justice, gun violence prevention, supporting libraries, walkable neighborhoods. I'm very proud of the fact that California Public Library Advocates gave me a statewide award, EDPO gave me a statewide award, East Bay Express gave me an award for the best good government politician. But most importantly, I work hard. I have strong support among a whole range of community leaders, local and state elected officials. 20 former and current state legislators have endorsed my candidacy, including Tom Amiano, Mark Leno, Fran Padley, a number of other folks. And I would love to have your support as well. Thank you so much. Happy to answer more questions.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm the only former state assembly person running in this particular race, and so I'm encouraging you to go to my website, sondrayswanson.net, and look at all the laws that I've written and all of the bills that are impacting the quality of life in our community. I have felt passionate about youth all of my career. That's why when I went into the assembly, I asked leadership to develop the select committee on men and boys of color. We developed that select committee. We had hearings all up and down the state. We wrote a wonderful report that I'll leave you a copy of. You can also see this report on my website under issues, and it has tons of recommendations on health, juvenile justice, employment, and the like. And this is a document that I encourage all of you to look at because it gives many solutions and many proposals that we need to pursue in the legislature. I started off also tackling this question of human trafficking. 40% of the young girls that are trafficked, are African American. Many minorities are victimized by this human trafficking. Go on my website and look at all the laws. And I opened up this campaign by telling everyone, we have to open our eyes. Today on the streets in Oakland, the largest city of this district, people are afraid to leave their homes. We have to address crime, and that's why it's #1 concern on my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Facing exploitation, many angry that the people that feed us are some of the most exploited people in our society. So I learned of a man named Cesar Chavez and became involved in an effort in San Francisco to name a street after Cesar Chavez. And I've been involved in political activism my entire life, fighting for economic and social justice. I'm a tenant, a lifelong tenant, also the youngest candidate in this race. I'm first Latino ever elected mayor of the city of Berkeley, and with your help, the first Latino to represent Senate District 7 in the California legislature. And I'm running on a platform to expand opportunity for everyone in this district, to build more affordable housing, to protect tenants from displacement, to make sure that we can truly invest in a more transformative approach to public safety. That's not just putting more police on the street, but reforming our criminal justice system and creating healthier and safer neighborhoods, making sure we address the humanitarian crisis of homelessness. No family and no kid should be homeless. And I believe that we must increase our investment in affordable housing and strong rent control and tenant protections to keep people stably housed. Please vote, please spread the word. This is going to be a low turnout election, so please get involved and make your voice heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you all so much for being here, for caring. I'm the only corporate-free candidate in this race. I'm the only social justice activist in this race. I'm the only one calling for, vocally calling for a ceasefire. I'm the only one who has literally worked with young people. I'm the only one who's kept children out of shackles and jails. I want to encourage you as young people to not just listen to what people say, because people have talked a good game. Right? You gotta look at what they've done for years. So I want to encourage you, go to my socials. Look through my socials and you see that I've been fighting for the community. Look through everybody's social here and see when they actually started to really care. Has it been just because there's an election, or has it been because it is what they do, because they love communities and they love people? I believe that representation truly matters. I'm a Black, Latina, queer, immigrant woman. I live at the intersection of so many marginalized communities, and I believe it's our turn. It's our turn to get a seat at the table. Right? This region has not been represented by a Black person or any person of color for that matter since Barbara Lee almost 30 years ago. That's a shame, that's an insult to folks. I'm endorsed by so many grassroots organizations. I'm endorsed by Rent